Hey, everybody, and welcome to another Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that's pretty fundamental to, well, any kind of writing you do,
Yeah,
and that's writing a good paragraph.
absolutely.
Um, and thankfully, a listener get in a really great resource, a whole course pack on paragraph writing
Wow.
from a university-level course. So,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
by the end of this, we're going to be paragraph masters.
I love it.
So I was looking through this course pack, and I think one of the things that really stood out to me
Okay.
was how much it emphasizes like the coherence and the unity of a paragraph.
Yeah,
And, I think that often gets overlooked,
it does.
but it seems really, really key to making your paragraphs really impactful.
It is. And it's one of those things that, when you see it,
Right.
if you're reading something and it just flows,
Yeah.
all the sentences connect to each other and they all support the main idea. And
Yeah.
that's really what we're talking about.
Right.
Like take, for example, that article you sent me about topic of listener's article. The paragraphs that were most compelling were the ones that had that coherence and unity.
Right.
Where each sentence kind of built on the one before it.
Yeah.
And they all sort of tied back to that central point that the author was trying to make.
So it's not just about writing grammatically correct sentences in a row.
Right.
It's about making them flow and work together.
Yeah, it's like you're building something. You have to think about how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, and the course pack actually gives some pretty cool techniques.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for achieving this, like using transitions, pronouns,
Yes.
even just repeating keywords for emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, if I'm writing a paragraph about topic of listeners writing and I have, a couple short sentences, how can I use those techniques to make that a little smoother?
Well, you could think about adding a transition word
Okay.
between those sentences, like however or therefore,
Yeah.
to show the relationship between them. Or you could try using a pronoun. To refer back to something in the previous sentence,
Okay.
just create a tighter connection.
So it's all about being intentional with how you arrange those sentences.
It is.
Okay, so speaking of being intentional, let's talk about something that trips up a lot of writers, myself included.
Oh, I know it's coming.
Commas and semicolons.
Yes, punctuation.
Punctuation. And the course pack, actually a good chunk of it is dedicated to punctuation.
Yeah.
What stood out to you in there?
Well, there's all the basic rules, like using commas to separate items in a list, but then
Then it gets tricky.
it gets tricky,
Yeah.
like when to use a comma before a conjunction.
Right, yeah.
It can be a little confusing.
I always second guess myself.
Me too.
Yeah.
But the course pack actually explains this really clearly. It says that you only need a comma before a conjunction like and, but, or.
Okay.
When you're joining two complete sentences,
Mhm,
two independent clauses.
Oh, independent clauses.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say listener's incorrect sentence with a comma splice, no comma there, because the second part isn't a complete sentence.
Right.
But if I say listener's correct sentence with a comma and conjunction, then I need the comma.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because now you have two independent clauses that are joined by that conjunction.
Okay, so it's all about understanding how those clauses are working together.
Yeah.
What else about commas does the course pack talk about?
Well, it goes into things like using commas to set off non-essential phrases, those little bits of information that you can
Right.
take out of a sentence without changing the main meaning.
Yeah.
And it also covers using commas after introductory elements. Like
Right.
in the meantime, I'll just keep practicing.
Okay.
So commas are important.
They really are.
They can really change the emphasis
Yeah?
and the flow of a sentence.
Okay, so what about the dreaded semicolon?
Ah, yes, the semicolon.
I feel like people either love it or hate it.
They do.
I tend to avoid it just because I'm not sure
I
if I'm
understand.
using it right.
A lot of people feel that way,
Yeah.
but the course pack does a really good job of breaking it down.
Okay.
The main use of a semicolon is to join two closely related sentences that could stand alone,
Right.
but you want to connect them a little more tightly than you would with a period.
Okay, so for example, the sun was setting, the sky was ablaze with color. Could become the sun was setting, the sky was ablaze with color.
Exactly, and it just creates a smoother transition between those two ideas.
Right.
It emphasizes that connection.
Like a little wink to the reader.
Yeah.
Like, these two things go together, but I don't need to, like, hit you over the head with a conjunction.
You got it.
Okay.
And the course pack also points out that you can use semicolons to separate items in a list
Right.
when those items already have commas in them.
Oh, right.
Like if you were listing cities and states.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we've got semicolons. There's one more punctuation mark that I want to make sure we hit.
Okay, which one?
The colon.
Ah, yes, the colon.
Again, some people love them, some people hate them.
It's true.
So what does the course pack say about when to use it?
Well, the course pack emphasizes that colons are mainly used to introduce something, whether it's a list or an explanation, a quotation, or even a single word that you want to emphasize.
There's like, pay attention, here comes something important.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
like my favorite fruits are apples, oranges, and bananas.
Right.
Or she had one main goal to finish the race.
So it's all about that sense of anticipation.
Yes.
Like, look out, here it comes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about commas, semicolons, colons. We've got a good handle on these sentences. Now let's zoom out
Okay.
and look at that overall structure of the paragraph.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
And I have to say, I really loved how the course pack breaks down paragraph construction into those three key elements. The topic sentence, the supporting sentences, and the
Right.
concluding sentence.
Right.
It just felt very systematic, like, here's your roadmap, you can do this.
I love that.
Yeah, it made it seem very approachable. So let's start with the foundation. That topic sentence.
Yes, the topic sentence.
What exactly is its role?
Well, think of the topic sentence as the North Star of your paragraph.
Okay.
It clearly states the main idea that you want to explore in that paragraph. And it guides all the other sentences that follow, just like a thesis statement,
Right.
anchors an essay.
Yeah.
The topic sentence provides direction for your whole paragraph.
So every sentence that follows that topic sentence should in some way connect back to it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like building an argument. The topic sentences, your claim.
Yeah.
And then the supporting sentences provide the evidence and the reasoning to back it up.
Okay.
They all work together to make a cohesive point.
And what about those supporting sentences? What makes them really effective?
Well, supporting sentences, they're like the building blocks of your paragraph. They provide the details, the examples, the explanations, the evidence
Right.
to develop and support that main idea.
So they're not just like random sentences?
They're not random.
They're very strategically chosen.
They all serve a purpose.
Okay.
And even the order in which you present those supporting sentences
Right.
is important. You want to think about how to arrange them logically and strategically to create the most impact.
Okay, so we've got that topic sentence. We've got those supporting sentences. What about the concluding sentence?
The concluding sentence.
How do we wrap it all up?
Well, the concluding sentence is like a graceful exit.
Okay.
It leaves the reader with a lasting impression.
Mm-hmm.
It can summarize the key points. It can restate the main ideal in a different way. Or it can offer a final thought that kind of extends the meaning of the paragraph.
Like putting a nice little bow on a package.
Exactly. A sense of closure.
Okay, so one thing I found interesting about this course pack
What's that?
is that it doesn't just focus on this sort of like general structure of a paragraph.
Right.
It also goes into detail about different types of paragraphs.
It does.
Each with its own purpose and its own techniques. So we've got process paragraphs,
Yes.
opinion paragraphs, and descriptive paragraphs.
Right.
Can you just give me a quick overview of each of those and like how they differ?
Sure. Let's start with process paragraphs.
Okay.
Process paragraphs are all about explaining how something works
Okay.
or giving step-by-step instructions,
Okay.
like a recipe
Right.
or a user manual.
So like if I was writing a paragraph about how to make my grandma's lasagna,
Exact.
that would be a process paragraph.
Yes.
Okay.
And the key to a good process paragraph is using clear and concise language, strong action verbs, and
Yeah.
transitions that guide the reader through each step.
Like first do this, then do this.
Exactly. It's like holding their hand
Yeah.
and walking them through the process.
Okay, what about opinion paragraphs?
Well, opinion paragraphs are all about persuading the reader to see things your way.
Okay.
Presenting a clear argument supported by evidence and reasoning.
So if I'm trying to convince someone that vinyl records are superior to digital music,
Exactly.
that would be an opinion paragraph.
That's a good example.
Okay.
And the key to a strong opinion paragraph is to state your stance clearly in that topic sentence and then back it up with well-reasoned arguments and examples.
It's like you're building a case
Yes,
to present to the jury.
that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And then finally, we have descriptive paragraphs.
Okay.
And these are all about creating a vivid and engaging picture in the reader's mind.
Okay.
Appealing to their senses and emotions.
So like I'm trying to transport the reader to a bustling marketplace.
Exactly.
Okay.
You want to use vivid language, sensory details, figurative language
Okay.
to paint a picture with your words.
Like I'm an artist.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. You're using words as your brushstrokes.
I like that.
So, do you want to dive a little deeper into the mechanics of writing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Specifically, how to handle those commas and semicolons.
Okay, let's do it.
We talked about earlier.
I'm ready.
All right, let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everybody.
All right, so let's get into those commas and semicolons.
Yes, let's do it.
I know we touched on comma splices and run-on sentences, But it seems like the course pack has a whole
Oh!
arsenal of other comma rules in there.
It does.
So what else is in there?
Well, it starts with the basics, using commas to separate items in a list.
Right.
Like, I went to the store and bought apples, oranges, and bananas.
Right.
I feel like most people get that one.
Yeah.
But then things get a little trickier.
Yeah.
Like when to use a comma before a conjunction.
Right. Yeah.
That one always tricks me up.
I always second guess myself.
Me too.
Yeah.
But the course pack explains it really well.
Okay.
It says that you only need a comma before a conjunction like and, but, or.
Okay.
When you're joining two complete sentences,
Right.
they call independent clauses.
Right.
So in that sentence about the grocery store, you don't need a comma after store
Mhm.
because and bought apples, oranges, and bananas isn't a complete sentence
Okay.
on its own. But if you were to say, I went to the store and I bought apples, oranges, and bananas,
Okay.
then you would need that comma because now you have two independent clauses
Okay.
joined by that conjunction. And
All right. So it all comes down to those independent clauses.
it does.
Okay. Got it. What else does it say about commas?
Well, it goes into things like using commas to set off non-essential phrases,
Yeah.
those little bits of information
Right.
that you could take out without changing the meaning of the sentence.
Right.
And it also covers using commas after introductory elements.
Right.
Like, in the meantime, I'll just keep practicing.
Okay. Yeah. It's amazing how much commas can actually change the flow.
Oh, they're powerful.
Of a sentence.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what about the semicolon?
The semicolon, I think a lot of people are afraid of it,
Yeah.
but it's really not that scary.
I tend to just avoid it.
I
I'm
understand.
like, I don't know if I'm using this right.
I get it. But the course pack explains it really well.
Okay.
It says that the main use of a semicolon is to join two closely related sentences
Okay.
that could stand alone, but you want to show that they're connected
Right.
more closely than with just a period.
Okay. So like the sun was setting, the sky was ablaze with color.
Yeah.
It would become the sun was setting, the sky was ablaze with color.
Exactly. And it just creates that smoother transition
Yeah.
between those two ideas.
It's subtle, but it's nice.
It is. It
Hmm.
emphasizes that connection.
Okay.
And the course pack also mentions that you can use semicolons to separate items in a list
Right.
when those items already have commas in them.
Right. Like if you were listing city and state.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like San Francisco, California, New York, New York.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we've covered semicolons. There's one more piece of punctuation that I want to make sure we hit.
Okay, what's that?
The colon.
Ah, yes, the colon.
I feel like, again,
Yeah.
people either love it or they're terrified of it.
It's true.
What does the course pack say about when to use it?
Well, the main thing it emphasizes is that colons are used to introduce something,
Okay.
like a list, an explanation, a quotation, or even a single word that you want to emphasize.
So it's like, pay attention.
Exactly.
Like,
This is important.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you might say, my favorite fruits are apples, oranges, and bananas.
Okay.
Or she had one main goal, to win the race.
So it's all about that anticipation.
It is.
Like, boom, here it is.
It's coming.
Okay, so we've talked about commas, semicolons, colons. We've got a good handle on these sentences.
We do.
Now let's zoom out
Okay.
and look at those different types of paragraphs.
Yes, let's do that.
And I'm especially interested in how punctuation plays into each of those.
That's a great point.
So let's start with process paragraphs.
Okay, process paragraphs.
I know you mentioned they're kind of like recipes or instruction manuals.
Right, exactly.
And so I'm imagining transitions are really important there.
Oh, they're crucial because you're guiding the reader through a sequence of steps.
And the course pack actually gives some helpful transition words for those.
It does. Words like first, next, then, finally. Those can really help the reader follow along.
And commas are important there too,
Yes, definitely.
for separating those introductory phrases like first, gather your materials.
Exactly. You're providing a clear roadmap for the reader
Right?
with those transition words and commas as your signposts.
It's so true. And like, imagine you miss a comma in a recipe.
Oh, no.
You could end up with a completely different dish.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got process paragraphs down. What about opinion paragraphs?
Opinion paragraphs. Well, here you're building an argument, and I think semicolons can be really effective in adding weight to your claims.
Okay.
You can use them to connect those two closely related sentences
Mhm.
that reinforce your point,
Okay.
and it gets a sense of momentum.
So like instead of saying, I believe exercise is important for good health, it improves both physical and mental well-being.
Right?
I would say, I believe exercise is important for good health. It improves both physical and mental well-being.
Exactly.
Okay.
That semicolon really emphasizes the link between those two statements.
Okay, yeah.
Makes your argument stronger.
It does.
And what about colons in opinion paragraphs?
Yeah. Are those useful?
I think they can be really helpful for introducing examples that
Yeah.
support your argument. For
Right.
instance, you could say, there are many benefits to a plant-based diet, improved heart health, reduced risk of certain cancers, and a lower environmental impact.
Okay, so it's like setting up
Yes.
those examples.
Exactly.
Okay.
It gives them that extra emphasis.
All right, so that's opinion paragraphs. What about descriptive paragraphs?
Descriptive paragraphs. Here's where punctuation can really shine.
Yeah.
Because you're painting a picture with words.
Right.
So you can use punctuation to create a certain rhythm or flow.
Okay.
Think about how commas can set off descriptive phrases.
Right.
Adding those details and texture.
Okay.
So instead of saying, the old house stood on a hill,
Yeah.
you could say, the old house, with its peeling paint and overgrown garden, stood on a hill.
Okay, yeah.
Those commas just give the reader a moment to pause
Right.
and absorb those details.
So those commas are almost like little brushstrokes.
Exactly.
Adding detail to the picture.
Yeah, I like that.
And what about semicolons?
Semicolons. You can use those to connect two descriptive sentences that paint different aspects of the same scene.
So instead of saying, the waves crashed against the shore, the seagulls cried overhead.
Right.
I could say, the wave crashed against the shore, the seagulls cried overhead.
Exactly. It just creates that more immersive experience
Okay.
for the reader.
And colons.
Colons, perfect for introducing a striking image or detail that you want to highlight. Like, as I entered the forest, I was struck by the profound silence. Only the rustling of leaves broke the stillness.
It's almost like a spotlight
Yeah.
shining on that detail.
It is. It highlights it.
Okay, so we've covered how punctuation really plays a role in those different types of paragraphs.
We have.
Is there anything else about crafting these amazing paragraphs that the course pack highlights?
Well, one thing it emphasizes is sentence variety.
Okay.
And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, so sentence variety.
Sentence variety.
Why is that so important?
Well, imagine reading a paragraph where every sentence has the same structure,
Yeah.
the same length, and it just gets really monotonous. Even if
Okay.
the ideas are interesting,
Right.
sentence variety just brings that rhythm, that energy to your writing.
It makes it more interesting to read.
It does. It keeps the reader engaged.
So instead of having like all short declarative sentences,
Right.
you want to mix it up,
Yes. Mix it up.
have some longer sentences, maybe throw in a question.
Exactly. Keep them on their toes.
Right.
Think about that piece you're working on.
Okay.
About topic of listeners' writing, are there places where you could combine a few shorter sentences to create a more flowing effect? Or maybe use a semicolon to
Yeah.
create like a dramatic pause?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do see a few spots where I could play around with the sentence structure a bit. It's like I was so focused on getting the ideas out
Right.
that I kind of forgot about how it sounded.
Exactly. And that's what makes writing really sing.
Right.
Paying attention to the sound of the language.
Okay, so beyond sentence variety, what are some other things we can do to make our paragraphs just really sing?
Well, another technique the course pack talks about
Okay.
is using vivid language.
Okay.
Ditching those generic words and phrases.
Right.
And really trying to find language that is descriptive,
Okay.
evocative.
So like instead of saying the man was angry,
Yeah,
I could say the man's face was contorted with rage.
exactly.
His veins throbbing in his temples.
Much more powerful image.
Right.
And don't be afraid to use figurative language, too, like
Yeah.
metaphors and similes to really add that depth and color.
So his anger was a wildfire burning out of control.
There you go. See?
Right.
That paints such a vivid picture.
He does.
Now, as we're thinking about crafting these really captivating paragraphs, there's one more really crucial element that the course pack emphasizes.
Okay, what's that?
Audience awareness.
Right, yeah.
We can write the most beautifully crafted paragraph, but if it doesn't resonate with the reader,
It's all for nothing.
it's a waste.
Right.
So always keep in mind, who are you writing for?
Yeah.
What are their interests? What kind of language will they connect with?
Right, right.
And what tone is going to be most effective?
It's like giving a presentation. Right.
Exactly.
You're not going to talk to a group of 5-year-olds the same way you would a boardroom of executives.
Exactly. Different audiences, different approaches.
Okay, this has been really helpful.
I'm glad to hear it.
I feel like I've got a whole new toolkit for writing paragraphs.
You do.
And not just paragraphs that are clear and well-structured, but paragraphs that are interesting and memorable.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
Memorable paragraphs.
So go forth, listeners. Put all this into practice.
Yes, keep around.
And make those paragraphs amazing.
And remember, writing is a journey, not a destination.
Ooh, I like that.
Keep practicing and keep experimenting.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone. 2229.